funny, it's kind of hard to do your voice. Hello, welcome to another installment of the Killam Community Meeting Series. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Jenny Kadiamaki. I'm the project manager for La Valley Brensinger with the architecture firm. And with us also Mike Carroll, owner's project manager.
Colliers International.
Thank you. And as has been our tradition at these meetings, we'll just pass the mic around the room for everyone to get a chance to introduce themselves. Start with Susanna.
Hi, Susanna, Colliers International.
Hi, good evening. Karen Alias. I live on Dana Road and I'll have a kindergartner in the fall.
Good evening, Karen Herrick, Reading Select Board and Vice Chair of the Building Committee and former or proud parent of an RPS graduate.
I'm Lee Sherwood, architect.
I'm Carla Nazaro. I am the chair of the Killam School Building Committee. I'm on the school committee too.
Tom White, school committee chair.
Ray Porter, the Climate Advisory Committee Chair, but I guess I should also, full disclosure, I'm now Commissioner on the Reading Municipal Light District.
Melissa Murphy, town meeting member.
Chris Haley, Reading Select Board.
Laura Stella, Butter.
Mike Holmes, about
Nancy Toomey, member of the Killam School Building Committee.
Insia Devan, resident of Reading Town and also an architectural lighting designer.
Great, welcome. Thanks all for joining us. A lot of familiar faces that I've seen a few times and a few new faces as well. So first, I want to review our schedule. We haven't looked at this in the last couple meetings. And we're kind of coming to the end of this first phase of the feasibility study. This is called the, oh, Mike, I always forget. PDP means
Preliminary design.
Preliminary Design Program. Anyway, PDP. So we will start our cost estimating of this piece next week. And so we're submitting all this material to the cost estimators. That's it's a little that's in my pointer. There's a little dollar signs over there. Mike's gonna try to find a pointer for me. Thank you, Mike. And then we'll be submitting the PDP package to the MSBA on May 20th. And we're going to have a little lull in our series of community meetings. So we've been meeting every couple of weeks. And during this interlude, while we're waiting for comments to come back from the MSBA, we're going to have a little pause in the regularly scheduled meetings. And our next meeting will be in July. So tonight we're going to talk about the educational visioning process that we went through with our consultant, MLP, which is My Learning Place, Integrated Design. And then we'll talk a bit about how that educational visioning process has informed the design of the school, in the organizational design and how the building is laid out and the adjacencies of different spaces. And then we're going to show you the 4 schemes that we, in terms of site planning, that we will be including for the PDP and including in the cost estimate. Basically the 4 schemes of where we're at right now with the design at this early stage. So the educational visioning process was probably took 2 months and involved a ton of different people, from staff and the principal at the Killam, the superintendent, and other people from the district level. We brought in the school resource officer and the rec department, like and students and teachers and parents. So all these different people that we wanted to hear from to really understand the Killam school community, to understand the priorities of the community, and to understand the learner, the teaching and learning that's happening, the educational process, and then how we can design a school that best meets all of those needs. So these are some of the activities that we did. We did a day of shadowing here at the Killam. So we walked around, Lee and I and Mike, and we talked to all different people in the building and kind of saw what happens here. We toured 3 different schools with a group of people. So we did 3 recently completed elementary schools. One was in Ashland, one was in Tewksbury, and one was in Danvers. For us to see, and for the folks on the educational visioning group to see what new schools look like these days, and kind of open their eyes, because we're building schools quite differently than when this building was built in 1969. And then we held a series of educational visiting workshops with different groups of people, and the goal there was to develop that understanding of the type of learner, and develop a picture of a learner in our minds. Actually, I'll go to the next slide to talk about this. This is kind of a summary of the educational visioning process. So it's kind of bringing together these 4 things: understanding the learner, understanding the learning that's happening in the classroom, understanding the teaching that's happening in the classroom, and then how the learning environment can better support those 3 things. And that's the educational visioning process. So here's what we found. These are kind of the priorities that came out of the process. What's important? What do we need to make sure that we achieve in the new building? We need to have a variety of safe and flexible spaces to support inclusivity, community, and choice, and to support those ebbs and flows of students' needs in different years, and then in bubble years. We have 4 second grade classrooms this year, and then next year we only have 2.
And we need a new mechanical system.
New mechanical system that's not as loud. All speak for.
What? I can't hear on HVAC.
We want to be showcasing student work to really put on display the great work and the teaching and learning that's happening in the school. And that also helps students to have a sense of belonging, because they see, there's my beautiful alphabet rainbow or whatever it is. You can tell I'm not educated. We want to support passionate and self-directed learning, also curiosity and purposeful play. This being elementary school, play is such an important part of the experience and of learning. We want to support opportunities to experience nature. We have community areas for all kinds of different groups to convene, whether it's small groups of 2 or 3 students, the grade level to get together, or the community at large, folks from outside the school, and creating different kinds of spaces to support all those different activities. And we talked about having a variety of sensory opportunities and calming opportunities throughout, so that students who have all kinds of different needs, and staff as well, can have the space that they need to kind of take breaks and kind of collect themselves and come back to be able to learn. And then from those priorities, we kind of developed a series of say strategies or tactics, like moves that we want to make sure we make in the new building. So now we're going to kind of like from goals to like design ideas. So we want to have flexible, small learning communities with like a group of classrooms that are together around a shared space, with shared breakout space. We would have spaces to support the community and create that sense of belonging. A really important thing that came out of the process was the idea of the library at the heart of the building, just like it is here. And that's a really important, that came out as a really important part of what has made Killam such a warm and welcoming community, the sense that there's a center to the building, and the center and the heart is the library. So we are really going to try to recreate that but maybe in a way that also allows the library to be a little bit more functional as a library. We need to have embedded special education services that are close to the classrooms but have their own dedicated space, which is really lacking in this building right now. We're going to have small group spaces between classrooms to enable different kinds of group activity, push in, pull out, and also those sensory opportunities throughout. So what this is, I'm going to try to navigate here one-handed. This is an organizational diagram. So from the educational visioning, then we wrote a program, which is just a list of every space that you're going to have in the building. From the program, we did this organizational diagram, which is trying to show how each of those spaces relates to the others. So we're not in a plan yet, we're just trying to diagram it, figure out how things relate to one another. So see here, we have main entry, read that. So from the vestibule, so one thing that came out is the importance of separating the pre-K, especially this diagram shows the large pre-K, the full district pre-K, which is 12 classrooms, having them have their own space, their own place, right? It's a little bit separate from the rest of the school. And then having a kind of zone of public spaces, so the gym, the cafeteria, having those all in their own little zone and near the entrance so that the school can kind of use those spaces for community activity off of school hours without having people wandering into like the library and stuff, like we have here. And then here you can see the media center, which is just struggling here. The media center, which just means it's just a different word for library. You see the media center at the center of all the classrooms. And here you can see those kind of neighborhood, grade level neighborhoods that we were talking about. So you have kindergarten classrooms, 4 kindergarten classrooms, clustered with a kind of flexible shared space in between, some of those small group rooms, and then each of those neighborhoods, this is LC, that's a learning center, that's the special education classroom. So they're kind of in one special ed classroom for every 2 classroom neighborhoods. And then those are all kind of come together into the media center. So that's kind of the organization that we're trying to create. And then when we brought that to the site plans and dealing with the constraints of the site, we kind of see we start to push and pull against some of the constraints that we have. And then we have these 2 enrollment options, right, that we've been talking about. So in the existing school, these are the square feet of the existing school. So the net square feet here of the existing, net just means like, we add up all the spaces inside each room. So the inside measurement of inside the walls of the cafeteria and the offices and the classrooms, but we're not counting the corridors, the toilet rooms, the mechanical spaces. That's just net and gross. I don't know what you need to know that. I'm an architect. Let's just talk about net and gross all the time. It seemed important at the time. Okay, so this is the existing gross square feet is about 61,000 of this building, and then including 2 little modulars out there. And the new school will be around somewhere between 103,000 and 122,600. And those are the 2 options depending on if it's the partial pre-K program with 4 pre-K classrooms or the full district-wide pre-K program. So we're continuing to look at those 2 options. And I'm going to turn it over to my friend Lee to talk about some schemes. He's a schemer.
Sure, as long as I don't have to do the button too. You'll have to do the slide.
Oh.
We'll figure out how to use this first. I figured it out. Thank you. So that organizational diagram that you saw is what the inside of an architect's brain looks like. You know, that one with all those little boxes? It's basically, it's the program, and all of those pieces are the sizes and the adjacencies and the connections. A lot of it has to do with how teachers and parents and children use the building. First they come here, they get their mail, they go to their classroom, they do this. Those things are really essential to a really good elementary school or any school working. So it may be more important to us than it is to you, but if you do it right, it will work, it will function. And there's no reason to do a school if it doesn't function. Most of you have been at other ones of these meetings before. And we're doing the things a little differently, showing the educational planning. But you've all seen this, and you know that we've been working with a traffic consultant, and we've had meetings talking and eliciting your comments about the site and the neighborhood and all of that. And we have listened, and what's good about this for us is we've established a program for the inside of the building and how it should function. Even if it's 2 or even 3 stories, it still has to be able to function. Working with you, with the traffic, but also understanding fields and flow, parking and drop-off, we're establishing criteria and a program for the outside of the building. We have a very specific site here. There's no site like it on Earth. Some people live next door. And you don't live in any other place, as far as I know. So it's really important for us to drive around, walk around, really understand the site. But the real trick comes in taking that program, understanding that there's an existing building here, which you've just seen, and then trying to put a new building on the same site so it works better, maximizes the amount of square footage of land that you have and all of that. And as you know, we've been really, really focused on trying to help the parking, especially at pickup in the afternoon. People are parking all over the place. We care a lot about safety of the kids crossing walks and all of your sidewalks that are blocked off by parked cars. And our traffic engineer had a lot of really good ideas about that, and we're utilizing all of them. Some of the biggest things we're doing, if you look at the right side, which is kind of a new building, is the idea of getting as many cars off the street for queuing so you don't have backups and all of that. And then even have flexible parking for events, because you can park all around that loop. So we have our parking, but we also have kind of a flexible site. We could come in here and pave the whole site. You could park everywhere, but that's not good for a little kid to play. So we kind of have to try to find the right balance. So I just wanted to show you, we're still working on this. It's not totally figured out. You gave us some really good suggestions. I remember everything you said. Everything. Next. So, what we're going to show you today, part of our work with the MSBA and the town is to put together a range of options that represent, let's say, a renovation of a piece of the building and an addition. You remember that idea, the idea that we're supposed to look at this building as just a renovation, although it's way too small, and then we're supposed to see if we can renovate some of it and what happens when we add on. And so that's one of our options. And I won't say much about it here. The second option that we're looking at, remember we're doing a full range, is the idea of doing a 3-story building. Remember the existing building's about right here? So if we're going to leave that open while we build a new building, which is the least expensive way to do this, there's disruption, but it's also the least expensive unless you have some free swing space that anybody has. Maybe open up all your homes. But building a 3-story building has pros and cons, and we're going to look at that. And we're looking at the building layout for that as well. I will say one of the cons is when I drive down the street on Haverhill, I don't see any 3-story buildings, do you? So that's a thing to think about. That's called scale, and that has to do with fit. Does it fit the neighborhood and all of that? It's very important to us. And And then it's important to give you a roof here as well. And then we were challenged to look at creating for C a full two-story school, not three-story, that held all of the program square footage gross of that larger version on the site without tearing down any of this building while we build it. And this scheme right here, you can see how it jogs a little bit because that's the shape of the existing building. Actually, it's a two-story building, and we've done like layouts and things like that on it, and it actually works. It has attributes. And then D, the idea was, if you could take down pieces of the existing building, say a few classrooms, and there was a way to do that, what would you do differently? Would you re-envision a different kind of layout, a different kind of scheme that might create more opportunity on the site? Next. So what we're doing tonight is just giving you a glimpse, kind of a heads up. I'm glad there are people here from the select board and people like that, because you're going to see this come back to you over and over and over more developed. We're just taking the inside and the outside of the building, putting them together. So you've just seen the very first things. This is the idea of an ad reno. And if you look up here, you see that there's always two. There's one which is A1 full pre-K. That's the larger version. You know that this right here is a one-story. This is where all the classrooms are. That's the existing wing. But it's one story. When you have a small site and something is one story, and you have to maybe double the square footage, we can all do the math and realize that there's not going to be much land left. So that's what you see here, is you see a lot of footprint. Even when we build a new building here and it goes 2 or 3 stories high to fit, the length of the queuing is quite short, and we've been trying to get people off the streets. The size of the parking lot along the edge here has a lot of spaces, but actually not as many spaces as we'd like. The play areas are kind of dispersed and limited, where we are challenged with getting buses in and out and service and all of that. And look at this field. I have a hard time even calling it a field because it's like 100 by 106 or something like that. Even I couldn't kick the ball across this field. And so it's not, one of the things we learned from our rec people was that it would be really nice to have a J12 field, which is really usable for the weekends and soccer and things like that for your community. And so that is a goal that we have. So this is a building that reuses some of the existing building. It fits on the site. You can build it. And also though, you can imagine, if you build a new building here, a piece of building, you do have to come back, tear this down, but also renovate. And we're talking about a major renovation, not just, like scrubbing the walls and paint. So that's called phasing. That means that that piece of school is going to have to be shut down for a while. The kids are going to be moved around many times. Believe it or not, when you do a renovation addition like that, it generally takes longer to build in terms of general conditions than building a new school, because you have to keep coming back and keep coming back. It gets extended. There's more disruption to the kids. There's more safety issues as they get moved around and all of that. And it's something to keep in mind. For all of these, what we're doing right now is we're actually doing our very preliminary pricing, square footage pricing. We have a really good cost estimator who can look at diagrammatic things and tell us about what it might cost. So that'll be part of all of your decision-making process. But if anybody asks me tonight, how much is it going to cost? I'm going to say, I don't know, because I don't. Because that's the process. Next. This is so interesting to challenge yourself to build, say, a 3-story elementary school. I've kind of noticed a thing. When I'm driving around my town and I see the old brick, they're always condos now, but they used to be schools. They're like 3 stories tall. They used to do it all the time. I'm On the other hand, then in the 50s and 60s, everything became one story. Maybe they had more land back then, and now there's not as much land. There is a real trend now to build 2- or 3-story schools again, even elementary schools, for a number of reasons. One, sustainability-wise, it takes up less footprint, and you have more green space and more absorption of water, more land, more natural stuff. It's also better for energy, because if I have a 3-story box versus a 2-story spread out, I'm going to have less surface, less, for energy to lose heat and all of that. So it's a good approach, and we should look at it, we should price it, and understand how it works. But oftentimes it doesn't work as well for elementary schools when we talk about those adjacencies and the kids going up and down and it's more vertical. And it's something for our educators to know about, to tell us if that's the right answer. And I already mentioned that when we meet again, you will see more 3-dimensional things on the site. We'll even show you kind of like preliminary things where you see kind of the height of the building in context with the street. My intuition tells me that a 3-story building too close to the street could be a little overwhelming, and we'd have to either step it or employ other tactics for scale to make it feel welcoming and appropriate. Does that all make sense? I'm telling you things that we think about because this is a holistic process. We don't just say, okay, here's a building, we did this one over in this town, and plop it on. We just don't do that. So the next one is, so go back one time, look at the side, oh, sorry. Look at the size of that footprint. Okay, now, bam, next. So that's the same thing, but 2 stories. You can see how that footprint really grew and really expanded. We're trying to stay in this one still away from the existing edge of the building so it could be built without tearing it down or impacting it. But see how it's getting closer to the edges, to the street. Those proximities and those distances are important, right? I mean, you live here, this is your streets, this is your world. But on the other hand, it's a whole 2-story building. And when you're within a 2-story building, especially for an elementary school, you kind of understand it very easily. The second is 3 stories, you have to go up 2 flights, so you can't see it. Do you know what I mean? You don't know where you are as well. So actually our superintendent challenged us to do a full 2-story school like this and said, see if you can fit it on the site. Because he knows his kids, and he knows his families, and he knows education. This is really interesting because, at least in this scheme, it's only 2 stories. There are ways to kind of avoid April, but still create play space. This is actually a huge amount of space, believe it or not. I think that's like 6,000 square feet or something like that. You're going to ask questions like this later on, like how much square footage do you need per child? I'll tell you that it's about 75 square foot per kid is going to be on the playground. But obviously you don't bring all the kids out at the same time, it's usually about a third. I like to get more like a half, imagine half the kids are out there just to have some wiggle room. These play spaces right here, this is for the pre-K, for the K through 5, the WOW Center, which is that courtyard space which wants to be somehow replicated and used again. Those are actually pretty good sized play areas. And what I like about them is that they're adjacent to the building. So you don't like cross a street or cross a parking lot or anything like that. People have asked about parking spots. We need the equivalent of about 125 spots on this site for it to work well for all of the staff and the people who would use it on a daily basis. And we try to limit it, but the truth is that on the weekends, if there's an event, it comes in handy. Those of you who have been at the traffic meetings, you know that we're trying to do a long queue on the site with a safe drop-off and out. And what's cool about this drop-off with our traffic engineers is that in the afternoon or in events, it has parking. It's wide enough to have parking all the way around like that. All those people can get off the street, and it doesn't double your amount of parking, but it greatly increases the amount of spaces that we have. Plus, as you remember, they're really working on Charles Street and other places to make it safer, to do all the things that we talked about. This field right here is, I'm going to say it's about 220 by 160 feet, which I believe is a J-12 field, which is a wonderful, large field that rec can use. It's for kids and all of that. And that is our goal, to try to get that safely on site, make it really work well, because it's a very important green space. So it's not a bad scheme, and especially if you want to leave the building there throughout the whole construction, it works. It pulls away from Charles, and we are still fairly dedicated to the idea that Haverhill is a fast, dangerous, scary street. And even if we did have play, there'd be a fence right here, maybe a 4-foot fence, but very protective fence. And that's kind of the pressures that we feel on this site between safe and Haverhill. Though, again, those of you who were here for the traffic study heard what they observed on here. Next. And then we have this idea where we were asked one more time to do a 2-story scheme, but this time, instead of making it so kind of wide and compact, so those wider schemes you kind of bring light into the middle sometimes, maybe the libraries in the middle, and it's that kind of space. This kind of space it doesn't have exterior windows. You don't want to do that for classrooms, and we never do. But for certain spaces, we might be doing that on a wide scheme. But on a scheme like this, where we have wings, we can actually have our neighborhoods, for the grade-based small learning communities, in areas like this for classrooms. Maybe have a media center here, and then the gym and the cafeteria over here. And you can see just by the shape of the building, it's starting to create scale. This edge right here is much broken down from Haverhill Street. So you really, there's a facade and it pushes it back and all of that. Those are real things, at least to me they are, and I think you would observe them. But the challenge of this one right now is that you probably impact a piece of the existing classroom wing, and maybe you take out a little piece of the wing, 6 classrooms, if the district and the superintendent and others can figure out what's a really viable way to do that. We will always do a scheme where we invite, as our manager, he knows to do this. We will always do a scheme where we say, hey, what if we tear down this building and you have a totally clean site? What would you do? And that's because if you had a place to put the kids for 2 years, which is a challenge, it is. But if you did, and it was acceptable and it was thought through, then you would have an easier time building the building, and it would probably go faster. And the money that you spent on temporary classrooms and conditions and things like that might actually balance out with the length of time and the complexity it takes to build when you have an active school on site. So we want to explore that and understand the costs, and all those issues. And so we'll have one scheme where we just think that way. Most of that is kind of, temporary conditions and stuff. It doesn't really say the school itself probably won't cost much different. Does that make sense? But you can see that once we let go here a little bit and push and pull, there's a very different shape we can do. But the phasing is a little bit different. I like this one because it has this wonderful play space here, quite large, and it has some play space here. Have you ever been to an elementary school where there's some play space almost right where you drop off, you get out, there it is, and it's kind of contiguous with the school? I think that's a very good spirit for an elementary school, as long as it's safe and protected. And the field fits. And there are different ways to do this. For example, I could actually put the field here, and put the parking here, like that. And in some ways that might be better because it kind of connects everything, where all the kids are running around. So there are great ways for us to flip things around. So we wanted to show you, give you kind of a first look at some of these things that we're doing. We've done little sketch floor plans of all these for, for the educational people who have looked at them to make sure that the shapes that we're showing here actually are appropriate footprints for the buildings that we're talking about. But we want to talk to you about education, the inside of the building, a little bit about the out, and then just hear some of your comments so we can go off and continue to try to solve problems. Next time we meet, we'll have a very different set of plans, of 3D drawings, still options there. We are not selecting a building for like an option, selecting an option for a few months, right? August or so. So it's a really long process, and none of you are voting until about a year from now, right? If even that, maybe even more. So we are being very deliberate, and we're talking a lot about traffic and safety and kids and education to make sure that we get it right as best as we can. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry, does anybody else have any questions?
I wonder if you could talk, maybe take one or two options and talk about how light and sun and heat move.
Okay.
For example, in what you showed, you kind of put the large spaces, the gymnasium, to the more south side of that layout. I see a north arrow. But how does light and heat and stuff shape your building and design and thinking?
That from the sustainability guy. So it turns out that 2,000 years ago, they used to build buildings based on the sun. And then somewhere in the last century, everyone forgot about it. And now it's a big deal again, and they're right. Buildings should be properly oriented. I'll start with this one. What we like about this idea is that the wing where all of the kids are, imagine this all the classrooms, 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 like that. The south, the sun's coming in like this. The perfect way to do a series of classrooms is to orient them all south and all north. Believe it or not, north light is nice light. It's very consistent. South light you have to kind of control. And if you can, it's nice to bring light in, to swoop some light down into the middle of a building so that it's getting very thick and share some light evenly. So this building actually orients really, really well. It doesn't have to be on the south side of the site or the north side of it. We could flip this whole thing, but it worked better this way. It's more about privacy also. So these are really well oriented for the sun. In my opinion, and there's a teacher in here, west light is the worst kind of light for a classroom. I've learned that from faculty years and years and years because if you think about the afternoon, it comes strafing in really low. You can't control it. You can pull down the blinds. It creates glare on the screens. Kids can't see anything. There's a heat gain that comes from that. So if you're ever doing a school, try not to put your classrooms on the west side. The east is lighter, it's not as bad. But this is like rules of thumb, and they're really important. For a school like this, because it has different edges here, it's not as bad in terms of getting daylight into the middle of the building. You probably don't need a lot of skylights or anything like that. It's really nice. But if we go back one, what? No, I don't think so. If we go back one, you see that this actually is a building where we actually have classrooms like this, wrapping this, which isn't bad. I mean, there are some facing west, and I'm not particularly happy, but we have to do revisions for that. But because this is thicker and we have the media center in the middle, we want to have a big old skylight or a scoop or third-story brick light down into the building and sharing it back, because that's actually quite thick. And so when we do a building like that, we save money on perimeter, but we really want to bring light into the middle. This isn't so bad, actually. I mean, these clear stories right here, they blocked this one off because it's probably south-ish. Yeah, that's the south. So they blocked it off, and it still has light coming through. They evened it out, is what they did. This is pretty well daylit during the day when you come in here. There's a lot of natural light. It doesn't feel good not to be able to see outside, you know, but it is well daylit. So you can see that that's, when you compact it like that, all of a sudden you have to just think of it as more of a donut. And that's how exactly we would approach it. Daylighting is super important. Now, why is that important also for heat and for electricity? If we can daylight a space, or you can take a gymnasium and have clear stories around it, during the day you don't have to turn on the lights, you just save a whole bunch of electricity, more than you'd think. And so daylighting is really important. And the quality of daylighting is important too, so you can spread the light, say, in the classroom back. Is that the kind of thing you're asking?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Let's hear, our lighting expert is next.
I wanted to add to your point about daylighting and being important for classrooms. From a climate standpoint, I mean, it's important to shield and to push the daylight further in. But from a learning environment, presence of daylighting for students is so important because there have been studies, and I'm happy to share them later, where researchers have shown that the right kind of daylighting and lighting inside of learning spaces helps with alertness of children, and it helps with the learning environment. So you can imagine like the opposite end of the spectrum. If it's dingy, you're not excited. But if it's nicely balanced, well lit, without the glare and direct sun, then that really stimulates students. So I agree with you. I think the alertness side would be tremendous.
That's been your experience too.
Yes, absolutely. Work on schools as well.
Are you a plant? A plant means that
Oh,
we
no.
put you here.
I'm a supporter for good environments. I love them. So.
Anybody have a question? Yes.
One is, you're talking about switching sorry. You're talking about switching the field and parking.
Yeah.
My only concern with that would be the people who take deliveries that are coming in who are coming with a big parking lot where the field is. Like, I like where the field is because it separates that rotunda drop off. You're going to have parking there already.
Right.
So that's just putting that out there. My question is, what are you going to put on the field? Is it going to be open, or are there going to be like installed things? I'll tell you why I'm asking.
You mean like artificial turf?
Tennis courts,
Oh.
field. I don't want pickleball courts. This is like elementary school. I live across the street. I don't want to listen to that, but I also want it to be perfect for that. Which is why I'm raising it.
Pickleball. So thank you for saying that about, because we'll show options where we flip things around a little bit, and there are pros and cons to either way with the parking lot. Maybe you move them, but we can overcome the issue that you're talking about. But right now, we have not been asked to do a turf field, an artificial turf field. We've been actually told that, especially for a smaller school like that, one, that's very expensive, and two, people are worried about artificial turf fields. And I'm not a scientist about it, but I just heard both sides of it. And it's an elementary school, and grass is probably okay. The field that you have out there right now, right? This is pretty much that. Grassy field, well irrigated, for, you know, like we can actually dig up and we can build a good base, get good water irrigation out of there and stuff like that, because you're kind of starting with a new base on the site. Does that answer it? I don't think no one has asked us.
I heard no pickleball.
Now, I will say that when you look at those play areas, they're actually quite large. Imagine those play areas, I'm going to make a guess here. See one of those play areas, like where it says play 3 through 5? That's about twice as big as this room. That's one play area. So I want to give you a sense of scale here. I just did that in my brain, but it's about like that. When you have that kind of play area, and now we do it with a lot of poured surface, because it's much, you don't have stuff flying, the maintenance and all of that. We'll often have basketball, like a nice half-court basketball and stuff. I play at my kids' elementary school all the time because I can dunk, because they lower the things. So that's the only reason I go. But there'll be a lot of, we will program with you guys. We'll ask you what are the kind of amenities that you're missing. Pickleball, out. There's not enough room for a tennis court on this place. Yes? It doesn't have to be a long meeting, we're just kind of unveiling something to you. Does anybody have any questions about the educational stuff? Did it seem like it was the right approach? I mean, it actually did represent like all bunches of hours. And I do want to give credit to the faculty. There's certain people from the faculty who have been involved in all of this throughout, but also all of the faculty. We actually meet with every single person who uses this building. We sit down with them and we talk with them and we go over their program, what works, what doesn't work, what they can see for the future. And there will be more school tours that we're taking the committee on. I think some of the select people are being invited to a couple of these tours. It's really good to see what a brand spanking new, elementary school looks like. Because when you work with the MSBA, they reimburse a lot of money. So for example, you went through this process and you got this building accepted. There's only about 15 schools every year that get accepted into the MSBA program for a core. That means that this building, those of you who went on the tour, this building is one of the 15 least desirable maintenance buildings that you might have. In other words, it qualified. And we're not saying that means you should just tear it down and not think about it. We're just saying it qualified. And they're very particular because there's a lot of competitions from your towns. I say that because it's a real opportunity to work with the MSBA in the state, to have them get us fancy architects to come in but do all the educational programming, so you really understand how you're teaching, to do all the site work, and we're digging in the site and understanding what the subsurface, we really understand this building. All that work is because the state requires us to do all of that. But you're getting the benefit because the truth is they will reimburse a certain amount. We don't know the exact amount. It has to do with the town and all of that. But it will be a substantial amount of money. And we want you to be successful. So a year from now, if you're voting, we want you to be able to say, no problem, yes. I mean, I don't live here, so it doesn't benefit me that way. But my job is to listen and to put together a school that you feel like you can support. And that's why we're going through all of these different processes to find the right answer that's right for Reading, because there's no place like this.
This is kind of going backwards a little, but thinking about how people park currently, this is kind of a traffic thing all over the place.
Yeah.
You use the word they take liberties, some people use that, well, I'll use that lightly. How do you prevent people from using the parking spots to drop off and pick up kids? Because it'll be easy.
Yeah,
Are there traffic-y things that you
No, I think that's.
use?
Do you want to try?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think as with so many traffic things, there's only so much that can be done to control people's behavior. And I think you're right that some people, you know, probably there's not going to be like a staff person out there to make sure that, you know, parents aren't going into the staff parking lot. There will be a sign that says staff parking only. But I think you're right that, you know, if there are empty spots, people will probably come up and use them. On the other hand, you know, staff will typically all be here by the time of drop off in the
People
morning.
swim through, like they'll make it another.
Oh, make it another route.
I don't know, just food for thought.
If somebody does that, oh my goodness.
Come on.
No, I know, I totally agree. So
But just
it's a
food
part,
for thought.
yeah.
I didn't know if there were traffic things or parking things. that
One of
address them.
One of the things I remember us talking about this. One of the situations you have right now that we do want to remedy that's related. Right now, you come in to drop off, and the parking lot is beyond that. Which means if you're a teacher and you're trying to park, or you are trying to park, you literally have to wait in that long line in order to get past that. So that's why we separate it, also for safety. And that's why we also take the buses and try to have them also park along a different place. So that's why it's separated. How do you get people not to drive through the parking lot? You're just going to have to try to enforce it and have signs that say, don't do this, you're being an unfriendly neighbor. Or during the day, they can always put up a gate. I mean, people do that all the time. They'll say, we'll put a gate there, and people come in and they park, but there has to be other parking spaces that people can access. And it's kind of tough. It's a good one.
Any other questions? Sure.
So these options, the 4 options, of them, one was the 3-story one. I was just wondering, for the abutters down below, that maybe if you threw in a shading study, like at noon, maybe spring, summer, and winter, it would really help make the case for the 4-story building because of the shadow of the 3-story building more, or even in the house buildings, or just do one house.
Yeah. We will be doing a couple of site things that you may ask later about. One, we'll do a sound study that's required so that the equipment can't make more sound than what's already there. That's very important to the neighbors who live right next door. And we will do light studies, shading studies from the sunlight to make sure that we're not blocking, well, there'll be sunlight studies to make sure we're not blocking light to your house. And the next one, though, is also we do photometric studies of all of those of you who see developments, who see this. We have a bunch of lights, say we have lights on campus. They all have to be dark sky covered lights that shine just down. And we have to prove through a photometric study that no light is spilling off into any other neighborhood or, you know, anybody over our property line. But in terms of that, it's very interesting because sometimes you find something you wouldn't expect. This building right here is 2-story, but it's kind of lengthwise, and it's a little closer to the edge. So if we do a study, we might find that even though it's 2 stories, is one thing. But if you go back 2, you see that's a 3-story building, but it's much further away. It's 3 stories, but it's much further away from the property line. So you might find interesting things with that, because I can't imagine, you know what I mean. So so that's a good one. We will do that. We didn't have much more. I hope we didn't disappoint you. She's not done.
I just have a final slide here just to talk about our next steps, which I actually started with, so maybe I've already said all these things. I don't know what to say we don't. So we're going to be doing this preliminary square foot cost estimates starting next week. We're going to continue to develop these schemes and these site plans and these building designs. And next time that we come to see you, we're going to have some of those 3D views that we talked about. So we'll show how the building looks at least in massing in 3D, how it looks from the street, and we'll also have lots of information to share. I know everyone's very eager to learn about that. So that'll be July 8th, and hope you'll make it. And we'll all hang around for a few minutes, so if you have other questions you want to ask, or just shake our hand or slap us upside the head, it's welcome. Come on. Thank you. Have a good night.
Nancy did the addition on her.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
kidding.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It's funny, it's hard to hear your voice. Hello, welcome to another installment of the Killam Community Meeting Series. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm Jenny Kadiamaki. I'm the project manager for La Valley Brensinger with the architecture firm. And with us also Mike Carroll, owner's project manager.
Colliers International.
Thank you. And as has been our tradition at these meetings, we'll just pass the mic around the room for everyone to get a chance to introduce themselves. Start with Susanna.
Hi, Susanna, Colliers International. Hi, good evening. Karen Alias. I live on Dana Road and I'll have a kindergartner in the fall.
Good evening, Karen Herrick, Reading Select Board and Vice Chair of the Building Committee and former or proud parent of an RPS graduate.
I'm Lee Sherwood, architect.
I'm Carla Nazaro. I am the chair of the Killam School Building Committee. I'm on the school committee too.
I'm the school committee chair.
Ray Porter, the Climate Advisory Committee Chair, but I guess I should also, full disclosure, I'm now Commissioner on the Reading Municipal Legislature.
Melissa Murphy, town meeting member.
Chris Haley, Reading Select Board.
Laura Stella, butter.
Mike Holmes, about
Nancy Toomey, member of the Killam School Building Committee.
Insia Divan, resident of Reading Town, and also an architectural lighting designer.
Great, welcome. Thanks all for joining us. A lot of familiar faces that I've seen a few times and a few new faces as well. So first, I want to review our schedule. We have looked at this in the last couple meetings. And we're kind of coming to the end of this first phase of the feasibility study. This is called the, oh, Mike, I always forget. PDP means
Preliminary design.
Preliminary Design Program. Anyway, PDP. So we will start our cost estimating of this piece next week. And so we're submitting all this material to the cost estimators. That's it's a little that's in my project. There's a little dollar signs over there. Mike's gonna try to find a point in front of me. Thank you, Mike. And then we'll be submitting the PDP package to the MSBA on May 20th. And we're going to have a little lull in our series of community meetings. So we've been meeting every couple of weeks. And during this interlude, while we're waiting for comments to come back from the MSBA, we're going to have a little pause in the regularly scheduled meetings. And our next meeting will be in July. So tonight we're going to talk about the educational visioning process that we went through with our consultant, MLP, which is My Learning Place, Integrated Design. And then we'll talk a bit about how that educational visioning process has informed the design of the school, in the organizational design and how the building is laid out and the adjacencies of different spaces. And then we're going to show you the 4 schemes that we, in terms of site planning, that we will be including for the PDP and including in the process. Basically the 4 schemes of where we're at right now with the design at this early stage. So the educational visioning process was probably took 2 months and involved a ton of different people, from staff and the principal at the Killam, the superintendent, and other people from the district level. We brought in the school resource officer and the rec department, like and students and teachers and parents. So all these different people that we wanted to hear from to really understand the Killam school community, to understand the priorities of the community, and to understand the learner, the teaching and learning that's happening, the educational process, and then how we can design a school that best meets all of those needs. So these are some of the activities that we did. We did a day of shadowing here at the Killam, so we walked around, Lee and I and Mike, and we talked to all different people in the building and kind of saw what happens here. We toured 3 different schools with a group of people. So we did 3 recently completed elementary schools. One was in Ashland, one was in Tewksbury, and one was in Danvers. For us to see, and for the folks on the educational visioning group to see what new schools look like these days, and kind of open their eyes, because we're building schools quite differently than when this building was built in 1969. And then we held a series of educational visioning workshops with different groups of people, and the goal there was to develop that understanding of the type of learner, and develop a picture of a learner in our minds. Actually, I'll go to the next slide to talk about this. This is kind of a summary of the educational visioning process. So it's kind of bringing together these 4 things: understanding the learner, understanding the learning that's happening in the classroom, understanding the teaching that's happening in the classroom, and then how the learning environment can better support those 3 things. And that's the educational visioning process. So here's what we found. We found these are kind of the priorities that came out of the process. What's important? What do we need to make sure that we achieve in the new building? We need to have a variety of safe and flexible spaces to support inclusivity, community, and choice, and to support those ebbs and flows of students' needs in different years, and then in bubble years. We have 4 second grade classrooms this year, and then next year we only have 2.
And we need a new mechanical system.
New mechanical system that's not as loud.
All speak for. What? I can't hear HVAC.
We want to be showcasing student work to really put on display the great work and the teaching and learning that's happening in the school. And that also helps students to have a sense of belonging, because they see, there's my beautiful alphabet rainbow or whatever it is. You can tell I'm not an educator. We want to support passionate and self-directed learning, also curiosity and purposeful play. Being elementary school, play is such an important part of the experience and of learning. We want to support opportunities to experience nature, and have community areas for all kinds of different groups to convene, whether it's small groups of 2 or 3 students, the grade level to get together, or the community at large, folks from outside the school, and being different kinds of spaces to support all those different activities. And we talked about having a variety of sensory opportunities and calming opportunities throughout, so that students who have all kinds of different needs, and staff as well, can have the space that they need to kind of take breaks and kind of collect themselves and come back to be able to learn. And then from those priorities, we kind of developed a series of, say, strategies or tactics, like moves that we want to make sure we make in the new building. So now we're going to kind of like from goals to like design ideas. So we want to have flexible, small learning communities with like a group of classrooms that are together around a shared space with shared breakout space. We would have spaces to support the community and create that sense of belonging. A really important thing that came out of the process was the idea of the library at the heart of the building, just like it is here. And that's that came out as a really important part of what has made Killam such a warm and welcoming community. The sense that there's a center to the building, and the center and the heart is the library. So we're really going to try to recreate that, but maybe in a way that also allows the library to be a little bit more functional as a library. We need to have embedded special education services that are close to the classrooms but have their own dedicated space, which is really lacking in this building right now. We're going to have small group spaces between classrooms to enable different kinds of group activity, push in, pull out, and also those sensory opportunities throughout. So what this is, I'm going to try to navigate here one-handed. This is an organizational diagram. So from the educational visioning, then we wrote a program, which is just a list of every space that you're going to have in the building. From the program, we did this organizational diagram, which is trying to show how each of those spaces relates to the others. So we're not in a plan yet, we're just trying to diagram it, figure out how things relate to one another. So here we have main entry, read that. So from the vestibule, so one thing that came out is the importance of separating the pre-K, especially this diagram shows the large pre-K, the full district pre-K, which is 12 classrooms, having them have their own space, their own place, right? It's a little bit separate from the rest of the school. And then having a kind of zone of public spaces, so the gym, the cafeteria, having those all in their own little zone and near the entrance so that the school can kind of use those spaces for community activity off of school hours without having people wandering into like the library and stuff like we have here. And then here you can see the media center, which is just the struggling here. The media center, which just means it's just a different word for library. You see the media center at the center of all the classrooms. And here you can see those kind of neighborhood, grade level neighborhoods that we were talking about. So you have kindergarten classrooms, 4 kindergarten classrooms, clustered with a kind of flexible shared space in between, some of those small group rooms, and then each of those neighborhoods, this is LC, that's a learning center, that's the special education classroom. So they're kind of in one special ed classroom for every 2 classroom neighborhoods. And then those are all kind of come together into the media center. So that's kind of the organization that we're trying to create. And then when we brought that to the site plans and dealing with the constraints of the site, we kind of see we start to push and pull against some of the constraints that we have. And then we have these 2 enrollment options, right, that we've been talking about. So in the existing school, these are the square feet of the existing school. So the net square feet here of the existing, net just means like we add up all the spaces inside each room. So the inside measurement of inside the walls of the cafeteria, the offices and the classrooms, but we're not counting the corridors, the toilet rooms, the mechanical spaces. That's just net and gross. I don't know what we need to know that. I'm an architect. Let's just talk about net and gross all the time. It seemed important at the time. Okay, so this is the existing gross square feet is about 61,000. of this building, and then including 2 little modulars out there. And the new school will be around somewhere between 103,000 and 122,600. And those are the 2 options depending on if it's the partial pre-K program with 4 pre-K classrooms or the full district-wide pre-K program. So we're continuing to look at those 2 options. And I'm going to turn it over to my friend Lee to talk about some schemes. He's a schemer.
Sure, as long as I don't have to do the button too. You'll have to do the slide.
Oh.
We'll figure out how to use this first. I figured it out. Thank you. So that organizational diagram that you saw is what the inside of an architect's brain looks like. You know, that one with all those little boxes. It's basically, it's the program, and all of those pieces are the sizes and the adjacencies and the connections. A lot of it has to do with how teachers and parents and children use the building. First they come here, they get their mail, they go to their classroom, they do this. Those things are really essential to a really good elementary school or any school working. So it may be more important to us than it is to you, but if you do it right, it will work, it will function. And there's no reason to do a school if it doesn't function. Most of you have been at other ones of these meetings before. And we're doing the things a little differently, showing the educational planning. But you've all seen this, and you know that we've been working with a traffic consultant, and we've had meetings talking and eliciting your comments about the site and the neighborhood and all of that. And we have listened, and what's good about this for us is we've established a program for the inside of the building and how it should function. Even if it's 2 or even 3 stories, it still has to be able to function. Working with you, with the traffic, but also understanding fields, and flow, parking, and drop-off, we're establishing criteria and the program for the outside of the building. We have a very specific site here. There's no site like it on Earth. Some people live next door. And you don't live in any other place, as far as I know. So it's really important for us to drive around, walk around, really understand this site. But the real trick comes in taking that program, understanding that there's an existing building there, which you've just seen, and then trying to put a new building on the same site so it works better, maximizes the amount of square footage of land that you have and all of that. And as you know, we've been really, really focused on trying to help the parking, especially at pickup in the afternoon. People are parking all over the place. We care a lot about safety of the kids crossing walks and all of your sidewalks that are blocked off by parked cars. And our traffic engineer had a lot of really good ideas about that, and we're utilizing all of that. Some of the biggest things we're doing, if you look at the right side, which is kind of a new building, is the idea of getting as many cars off the street for queuing so you don't have backups and all of that. And then even have flexible parking for events, because you can park all around that loop. So we have our parking, but we also have kind of a flexible site. We could come in here and pave the whole site. You could park everywhere, but that's not good for a little kid to play. So we kind of have to try to find the right balance. So I just wanted to show you, we're still working on this. It's not totally figured out. You gave us some really good suggestions. I remember everything you said. Next. So, what we're going to show you today, part of our work with the MSBA and the town is to put together a range of options that represent, let's say, a renovation of a piece of the building and an addition. You remember that idea, the idea that we're supposed to look at this building as just a renovation, although it's way too small, and then we're supposed to see if we can renovate some of it and what happens when we add on. And And so that's one of our options. And I won't say much about it here. The second option that we're looking at, remember we're doing a full range, is the idea of doing a 3-story building. Remember the existing building's about right here? So if we're going to leave that open while we build a new building, which is the least expensive way to do this, there's disruption, but it's also the least expensive unless you have some free swing space that anybody has. Maybe you open up all your homes. But building a 3-story building has pros and cons. And we're going to look at that. And we're looking at the building layout for that as well. I will say one of the cons is when I drive down the street on Haverhill, I don't see any 3-story buildings, do you? So that's a thing to think about. That's called scale. And that has to do with fit. Does it fit the neighborhood and all of that? It's very important to us. And then it's important to the people who live there as well. And then we were challenged to look at creating for C a full 2-story school, not 3-story, that held all of the programmed square footage gross of that larger version on the site without tearing down any of this building while we build it. And this scheme right here, you can see how it jogs a little bit because that's the shape of the existing building. Actually, it's a 2-story building, and we've done like layouts and things like that of it, and it actually works. It has attributes. And then D, the idea was, if you could take down pieces of the existing building, say a few classrooms, and there was a way to do that, what would you do differently? Would you re-envision a different kind of layout, a different kind of scheme that might create more opportunity on the site? Next.